It done that way.
No.
And, you know, they think, well, it's two ply. I mean, they didn't say, when you were reading there, it didn't say it had to be nailed together, did it? But, I mean, there's no strength there, especially when you get into longer lengths. But that versus the next one here, where you're actually, they routed out the post, that's pretty good. That's a nice job. That's a carpenter I'd like to have doing my work. Because he knows, and he takes a little bit of pride and care, and all treated lumber, and nice and clean and straight, and it's, well, you know, when you go into a house, a lot of times when you see a builder, you know, you can tell almost when you walk in the door if you're gonna have fun or not, and depending on what you think is fun. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes you know it's gonna be a bugger. If I saw that kind of work, I know that deck is probably gonna be good. These are my favorite. Yeah, indoor, yeah, spa. I love brackets. I like to see decks on them. I didn't come across any, but I've seen like 12-foot brackets, and they build the deck on the end of that. Because that ain't going anywhere. I've never seen, anybody ever seen, well, I have seen brackets broken before, but usually a cat has hit them or something like that.
Is that concrete?
The bottom, right here?
Yeah, it's like a front porch precast support.
Next one here shows it kind of the other way. So that concrete bracket, they drill a hole through the foundation, and it's an all thread that starts up here, it comes down across and goes back and goes right through to the inside of the house. They put a nut on that.
And a washer.
And, well, yeah, a big washer and then a nut. And that ain't going anywhere. The only place that's going is where the house is going. So you don't have to worry about, you know, the type of footings. You don't have to worry about anything moving. Those carry way more than the deck is ever going to have on it.
Yeah. I've seen a few of those anchors where they have rusted and the bolt is.
Yeah, that's possible because water gets in behind there. But most of them that I've seen, when they're putting them on, they usually drill a hole downwards on them. And they put them in, and then I know that kind of makes it easier for them to get it nice and tight. But the water could run down if they caulk it on the inside, which happens all the time. Water's going to get stuck. Take a long time, but yeah, that's a possibility. Quite often we aren't going to see it on the inside unless the basement isn't framed. If the basement isn't framed and insulated, you're going to see it, but otherwise you're not.
Sometimes you see the oak at the roadside when it's gone.
Yeah. So this is my brother-in-law's house. And it's kind of interesting, his idea, because he didn't have much room. It's the 2x6s actually. And the right is the house and the left is the deck. It's only a 3-foot deck. But the next one shows it from the other end. He actually built it on the fence. And then put these brackets in. And it's kind of questionable who owns the fence. It's, so the neighbor decides he's going to take the fence out. So, you know, what are you going to do? I mean, obviously you got to bring it to your client's attention the way this is built. And you walk on it, it's pretty solid. Pretty solid. This one I loved. What do you guys see? What can you tell me? Well, I've written it there. See the corner?
They're using the stairs and landing up.
They are. It works pretty good, actually. I was surprised when I walked up that stair because I was waiting to go for a ride. But that's not cantilevered.
No, it's not.
Those steps were from the ground up like 10 feet. There must have been 15 steps on those stairs. And there's nothing there. And these joists here, they're not cantilevered either. Take a look at the next one here. This is the other side of it. The old deck ended here. These ones only go in over the beam. I couldn't frickin' believe this thing. And I got up there and I was quite surprised. It's pretty solid. But if you weren't looking and you weren't thinking about it, do you think you could walk by that? I know I could. Especially if it was really cold. There was no deflection in it or anything. I should have taken more pictures of that one, actually. No, the other side, was the original deck at the back. They added to this. And at the other end of this, like not even here, this one came across and over out, back out here, there was a beam supporting this. And I should have put the whole thing in there, but I didn't.
And then they put soffits over top of that, and you can't see none of it.
Well, on the original part, the soffits were on it. It was probably with soffits, I would have guessed it was probably a vinyl deck at one time.
Can you back up again?
To this one?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this, well, I don't know if, does that look crooked to you, or is it just yeah. Underneath here, so the original deck would have just come to, just past the end of the beam.
What's that down the way there? Is that deck go right across the front underneath?
No, this one, that's a cantilever of the actual house.
Right.
And the deck went around it, so that goes back to your question, can you do that? Yep.
Was there support halfway down the stairs on the string?
No, there wasn't, but near the bottom, they tied the stringer onto the post. So they nailed through the stringer on the one side into the post that was supporting the deck.
Yeah.
So now the stairs couldn't move, which was what was keeping the top. So you're absolutely right, the stairs were being used to hold the deck up.
Yeah, it's like a diagonal.
Yeah. So that's why it worked.
Yeah.
Now, I've told some of you before that I get often asked what's the worst thing I ever saw. And the worst thing I ever saw was 18 feet of bearing wall taken out of the basement bungalow. And I knew when I walked down the stairs I was in trouble because there was a great big, the billiard tables, what are they, 8 by 12 or something? And there was room around it, and a beautiful room. And I go poking around in this thing, and you could see that they had just come in and, I got into the furnace room and looked, you could see that it was a wall, there was no beam. And you could kind of feel where they had knocked all the, they used to put the little curb out. That was all knocked out. And I said, well, obviously, this wall has been taken out with no support. So I go back upstairs, and you could see it, but it was holding up. And it was just the envelope of the plywood on the 2x10s. That's what was keeping it up. But you put a load up there and you'd be down on the billiard table in no time. But that's the same thing, it's amazing sometimes what will actually work, even though it's not supposed to. But for how long is the question. And, when I chose this one, I haven't gone back to look at the report because I know I hit it pretty hard. But the more I thought about it, did I hit it hard enough? I should have said just have somebody come and rebuild it. And that's probably what I said. I hope I did anyway. Because wow, you wouldn't have much defense if somebody was, a structural engineer was saying, "What do you mean?" He said this was okay. All right, next one. What do I see here?
Long span.
What was I after on this one?
Long span.
I guess the biggest thing there is the tie downs on it.
3.
Kind of like that, and treated lumber. So certainly a good start to the deck here. These are the ones that I kind of get worried about. When this is finished, you have no idea what's going on underneath.
Yeah.
And sometimes you walk over. That's really all we can do is walk over them, right? And kind of wiggle around a little bit and maybe poke at the corners. And the only good thing is if they come down, they're not going to go too far usually. But they could be rotting like crazy underneath, and the top could look pretty good. Like if the people every year go out and paint it, and the underneath could be just rotting away.
That's treated lumber, Darcy.
Yeah, well, this one, I've seen treated lumber that rots too, but you know what I'm talking about. I just took it as an example, but. And this one comes back to that other one I was talking about, and a lot of times, for a long time, I've suggested as an improvement to provide access and ventilation underneath these. I think that should be a requirement. Just like access on the top of a furnace, I think that should be a requirement. But anyway, we don't know what's going on underneath there. I know one thing for sure, the ground underneath there isn't flowing the right way. Because I built enough houses to know that nobody puts dirt under there.
See, a lot of those are just spruce and OSB sheeting.
You bet.
Most of those are.
Yeah, that one I showed you that I was able to get underneath was, that's all that was spruce and that last one, that was a deck.
Right.
Yeah, and the other one was a deck as well, decking material. But again, just spruce, even though there's a cover on it, how long does it last, really? And then, of course, there's a corner, there's a post carrying the roof. And, you know, sooner or later, now that was pretty common back in the 70s, that houses were built that, and even now, they're building lots of them like that. So at some point in time, the deck is gonna have to come down, and you're gonna have to support the roof above it while you're repairing it. So it goes back to the houses that were built in 1912, where the whole front porch is sitting on an old rock they found somewhere, you know? So this one here, I really like this one. My clients were a young couple, and they're pretty fun. And there was some other problems on some of the other decks, but this one was really good, because they built a deck, and then they put plywood down, and then they built another deck on top of the first deck. And I just said, oh, holy crap. The next picture shows them walking up onto it. That was the most crooked deck I think I've ever seen in my whole life. They said, well, we need firewoods.
Is that the next layer of deck?
Yeah. But I actually picked up that ladder and I put it up against the wall and said, I think I'll go up and take a look at the roof. Everybody laughs, I've fallen off a roof. Anyway, I didn't go up, but I just did it for fun.
Look at that.
So, has anybody seen problems with composite decking? Yeah. I've seen it lots of times, that on 16 inches on center, that stuff, it's like jumbo almost. So this one, they obviously doubled everything up on it, but holy crap, I think I'd be looking at something different. You know, they got enough lumber in there to,
Expensive.
it's that 45, you know, to get that, you know. Yeah. Well, I've also seen with some of that composite deterioration, I've seen surfaces breaking down on it.
Yeah.
On the vinyl deck, I've seen that breaking down, you know, 10 and 15 years down the road. Yeah, there is something going on in that, isn't there? And the metal rails too, you know, that are dipped. I've seen them deteriorating as well.
That last one, they should have blocking.
Sorry?
The last one, you should have some blocking.
Blocking on, what was the last one? Oh, yeah, they should. Yeah, every 7 feet again. Yeah. That's a good point. Makes a big difference with solid blocking, even versus cross bridging. I mean, all those old guys used to build that way. It was amazing what that did to the floor system. When you put those blocks in there, everything just solid right up. And that'd be the same on that. So I got this one, and it had everything on it, but I see Wayne had some pretty good pictures here. You got that from the Alberta one, didn't you?
I got that from the Ashley magazine.
Oh, did you? Awesome. Was that this month?
No, it was a few months ago. Might have been last summer, actually.
Was that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody, how many people are Ashy here? Quite a few. I'm glad to see that. That the reporter, I should bring him up here because I don't know what to do with them.
Yeah.
You know, I read them, and you can read them 10 years later and they're still applicable. They really are. And I remember a few years ago I brought a whole box of them up here, and all of a sudden they're gone. I was glad to see that because I should maybe do it again, because they just sit in the corner of my office, and you know, if you haven't ever read them, they're pretty awesome. They're really, really well written usually, and good information in them. And it's kind of based on the states, but it's still good stuff. Anyway, again, just some of the requirements. What I basically do is, if it feels comfortable, and if I don't trip, I don't get too excited. But you know when I got to reach up like this to a handrail, that's not right. If I got to reach down for it, you know, it's good for grandbabies, but not so good for the average person. And handholds, I see it all the time, inside and outside. You know, a lot of times they build a nice handrail and you go halfway up and they hit the side of the deck, or they hit the floor joist on the house, and you pinch your hand in there. And I got to use a handrail most of the time now, but that's not right. You got to have unobstructed inch and what is it, inch and a half or 2 inches? Anybody know? 2 inches, isn't it? Yeah. Clear clearance, and I think the circumference has to be 1.5 inches. I'm going back a little bit. I think that's what the circumference of the handle, minimum. So when you're going along a set of stairs, you can't have to let go to get up the rest of the stairs. And I see it all the time where they hit something and you can't get up. and it's for old guys.
I didn't realize that the spindles have to be closer on a stair.
Over, as soon as you go over the, I think it's the 3 risers. So as soon as you need a handrail, they're supposed to be 4 inches.
There, yeah, 3 3/4.
Yeah.
Well, 3 3/4 or 3 7/8.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. But at the bottom, and that's the same in houses. I've had that discussion a few times, especially when I have clients with a little baby crawling around. They got the open riser stairs. You know, I say, holy crap! You know, I mean, you got to have this 3 7/8 on the handrails, and you got 7 inches underneath the steps. Little kids crawling up. Oh, look at Dougie down there. You know. So I've suggested, you know, you maybe put a decorative extension underneath the stair in the middle, something like that. Just, you know, while the kids are little.
That last photo just said showed it to be 6 inches.
I know, that's what I'm saying, and that's why I'm not so sure that that is right. Well, you see it all the time, but usually people put, what did I do in my own? I put one that comes up, I've probably got an opening that big on my back step, now that I think about it. So is it right or wrong? I'm supposed to be the expert presenting this right now, I don't know. I know on this one at the bottom, you could interpret this to have a step, but I think it's 48 inches. Or is it 50 inches? Before you, is
Triangle?
it 50?
Yeah, I thought it was 5 feet between the rails.
Yeah,
Yeah, maximum 5 feet.
yeah. So the bottom of this one, you're certainly getting close to that, so that doesn't make sense. So you'd put a rail for 3 steps, and then if you took it all the way up, you wouldn't be able to get in, so. But you can sometimes come across things that are a little bit different. That would have been quite a job building those stairs.
Yeah. It's not gonna last.
Probably not. But this was a different one, but without that support in there, I've gone up some of these that are just downright scary. Oh, yeah. Now, and then, you know, you say, well, you can put an extra stringer on the outside. And that was one other thing I didn't put in here, is I see a lot of times when the carpenters, depending how they lay out their stairs, you're getting down to like an inch or 2 inches on the what's left on the stringer. And when you see that, I mean, sometimes you gotta do that to make the stairs fit. Well, then you definitely need a solid stringer on the outside of that. And maybe a second one. You know, especially when you're going, you know, 12 feet or something in height. I mean, this is kind of common sense, I would think, but sometimes somebody builds them without common sense. And they obviously had to know something to figure it all out, but you definitely gotta look at that sort of thing and keep in mind who your client is.
So is that a 1x2 cladding, or is that a stair horse in between the 2 stringers?
That was 2x4s. Here, the cross bridge?
No.
Yeah, well, that piece going right in between the 2 stringers.
Oh, that's an extra.
Is that just a 1x2?
Looks like an extra stringer to me.
What is this?
One in the center. So, what is it between stringers? I think I got that coming up here. 3 feet, right? If you go more than 3 feet, you need another stringer. Yeah, stair horse, is that what you call it? Has anybody else heard that before? Stair horse?
Yeah, stair.
Really?
Yeah. Sure.
I've never heard that one.
Me.
Oh, okay, okay. Never heard that term. Well, that's pretty simple.
Two
How
handrails.
many steps before you need a rail?
Should be 2 handrails too, because it's
2
over
handrails.
44 inches.
And the bottom, I mean, how many of these you see the bottom is not enough and the top is too much, or other way around? I think that's the next, but, I mean,
Yeah.
not only is the stairs a problem, they got water running towards the foundation. You know, and it's, yeah, we understand why you get subsidence next to the house. It's just so common and so many things happen with it that, you know, it almost becomes that everybody just ignores it. And this one here, I wished I could have got underneath this, and the only way to get underneath this whole deck was this piece of OSB on there, and they had 4 screws in it. And I thought, well, maybe I should do it by, what's a readily accessible access? I think that was a little bit more than a readily accessible access, so I opted out of it, and I didn't really want to climb underneath that thing anyway. But again, when you see stuff like this, and I've got quite a few of this particular one here, the next one, this is the other end of this deck. What can you tell me about this deck? Now you might be hard to see further back.
There's a flashing on that side,
That's
but not
right.
on those 2 sides.
So this is another one, just like that other one, where right here, if you can't see it, it's flashing to here. And then from here around, and that went all the way to the other end where that stair was. No flashing, just nailed right onto the stucco. And that's why I wanted to get underneath it, but I said, well, I don't really have to get underneath here. I know what they've done. And the weatherproofing probably isn't much of a problem, but the structure probably is.
Battery's dying.
Because as tight as you try and get it, you ran out of juice? No?
Just flip the switch.
She got my good side. Well, if there is such a thing. Maybe.
She got the inside of Starbucks cup.
Right. So
Magic-
the next one, how are we doing for time? Oh God, I'm so glad.
Patent protected.
Nice.
So the next
You're
one,
almost out of time.
that's good, because I'm almost out of pictures. So what's going on here? This is another one that you guys are all tight. The landing's too small. 3 feet, or it's really simple, wherever the door swings. And it's 3 feet, 3 feet, that's the door, that means you're still on the first step. Swinging it over, you're definitely on the first step of this one. And this is the same deck, climbable, right? So my client said, well, what can I do about that? And I said, well, you can either take the rail off or you can put some plexiglass over it on the inside. That would work.
Spank your kids.
So spank your kids when they climb. The higher they get, the quicker you're higher you come in.
That's how we all learned.
Yeah.
You're not allowed lattice either. Yeah. So can you see on this one? A little bit harder to see on maybe. But as you get to the bottom, the steps get bigger. And with my feet, I notice those, I can tell almost a half an inch on stairs, And on this one here, this one was like a 2x10. Like there's 10-inch rise on the bottom one. And then the next one was less. You're just waiting to skin your knees on that.
Bash your teeth.
This is where the squirrel went. A lot of us forget about what's on the top of these. Of course, there's a post in the middle of this, and they wanted to build a nice little plinth on the bottom. You know what a plinth is? It's the sound a rock hits when it goes in the water. It goes plinth. No. Boxing around the posts just to make them look a little bit more substantial, but there's always these holes in the top. And the birds love it, the squirrels love it, and water loves it too, yeah. So maybe think about that a little bit, say, well, maybe you can do something on the top of that to help keep the water out of there and the vermin.
See a lot of those nailed together with just those,
Yeah,
18
brad
gauge-
nails.
Trimming out nets, trimming out windows with that.
Yeah, I know, yeah. And when they're about 8-10 years old, you can see the rust coming out, and they're just hanging there. They got caulkings keeping them in.
4 minutes.
4 minutes. I think I had this one on here.
Just falling off.
Yeah. Yeah, so these ones are just pictures. It's amazing. You just go with deck failure and you just get inundated with
Kids
it.
didn't know where that came from.
Yeah.
Is that after you jumped on it, Darcy?
Well, I do like to have fun. But again, that's ripped right off. Took right down to the insulation.
Fell from the extra weight of the console.
So it's obvious that there's been times, if there's pictures like this, and I just grabbed a few of them that I thought were pretty significant. And there's lots of them. Oh, you missed one there? Yeah, that one. At first I thought it was on the main floor, but that came from the second floor. Made a heck of a noise, wouldn't it?
And next one looked like it was a hot tub sitting.
Yeah.
Hot tub sitting on
Yeah.
the
There is there, yeah. Oops.
Yeah, holy smokes. It was pretty amazing, some of the failures that it just makes you think, even though they do work and they do feel like they've been pretty solid, the right circumstances at the right time. I wouldn't want to be facing any of these. Yeah. No, these are all off the internet. I haven't seen any of these. I did want to touch a little bit on vinyl. This is the way I see most vinyl decks done, where they leave the stucco stop, the stucco where it comes down, and they bring the vinyl in and they caulk underneath it. It kind of works. If you want to go to the next one, this is what I see most commonly, where the water's getting in behind there. It's just so common. I usually tell my clients, at least go on, put a piece of metal quarter round underneath there, caulk it, put the quarter round in just to kind of tighten it up as best you can. But the right thing, obviously, is the vinyl should have gone up in behind before at least a piece had gone up and then they could have glued to it or something. So at least there's some overlap there. I wanted this one, I was hoping I could have come across one, and I started going through all my pictures and I said, well, I don't even know where to look. How many times have you gone up to a concrete step and seen that the concrete is about an inch away from the wall, the foundation wall? We've all seen that, haven't we? Does anybody know why that happens, other than Clyde? Yeah. Nobody? Not everybody knows this. Oh. Go ahead and tell us.
Well, I think it's just caterpillars.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah. So it's at freeze, or all that's happening, of course, the brackets are holding up the deck. Deck is just sitting there. Every time I've ever seen that didn't happen on this one, but anytime I've ever seen it, the dirt is up against or above the bottom of the deck, the concrete. In the wintertime, it freezes and it picks the deck up, and when it thaws, it drops it. So over the years, it literally walks away from the house, or caterpillars away. And all you gotta do, dig a little hole with 4x4, like Clyde was saying, put it in, give it a push, it goes right back into place. But it falls off, the little shims they put under there fall off, and now you gotta rock and roll. That's very common. So I don't think I wanna go through all that, especially if I only got a few seconds left. So that's just what I've just kind of talked about, and we don't need to do that. The last one, because I know I got 2 minutes left. Man, those are fun, but you know what? I can't see underneath that one either. It's gorgeous, isn't it? I bet you that's 50,000 or more worth of deck there. And it's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. But we don't know what's going on underneath. And you can't get underneath to see it. Everybody's thinking, oh shit. Anyways, I hope it was fun for me putting it together. I hope it's been helpful. I know it's kind of boring, but I hope it was useful in some way.